I think many of you all might have seen that really one of our priorities was revitalizing our business districts and really revitalizing a lot of the 40th Ward with a focus on Lincoln, right? So I think many of y'all have seen by Lincoln Western area, we've got the Ainsley Arts District. We announced a $15 million TIF streetscape for Lincoln from Western all the way to Catalpa. And this is another component, pun intended, it's another bookend to what we're working on here, right? So, through our participatory budgeting process, which we call the People's Budget, where neighbors can submit ideas and ultimately vote on where the menu funding goes. We have $1 million of menu funding that we kind of give to the neighbors to help us decide. We were able to appropriate $100,000 towards an art installation at Budlong Woods Library. So if you think about the layout, you've got your frontage that's facing Lincoln, but then you've also got like the other longer side that has a lot of space to be able to do an art installation. Really primarily some of the conversation have been around a mosaic, but we also want to see like what people might be interested in and get that feedback. So now that we know we have $100,000 appropriated to do that, we began conversations with Budlong Woods Library and DCASE as well, so the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, which is in charge of the art and culture that we see here in Chicago. So this meeting is for us to have a conversation about what that vision can look like going forward, make sure that we get input from neighbors as we have that conversation, and walk you through a timeline of what things look like from first this like small seed of an idea about doing something at the library to ultimately being able to celebrate together as a community and seeing really what we can bring to the library there. So I think it's an amazing opportunity, and I'm really glad that we have such robust turnout because it just gets me excited. And I think in a time where we've had a lot of things that we've had to endure and kind of power through, for lack of a better term, it's really great to have these kind of meetings to talk about like the potential and opportunity we have going forward. So that's all I wanted to say and to thank folks. And I think Jesse's got run of show, so I want to make sure I don't put anybody on the spot. So who would be next?
DCASE.
Okay, so we've got Joanna Goebel. I hope I didn't put
Gable.
Oh, I should have known better.
Exactly, unlike it's spelled.
Thank you so much for being with us. So yeah, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and share kind of what next steps are.
Okay. So I just want to take a moment to shout out to our project advisory panel. They are an important part of this process, and so we're really glad that they could be here today. And I'll just quickly let you know who they are, because I'm having trouble seeing everyone on the screen. So from the Budlong branch, we have Tom Stark. And from the community, we have Beth Voigt and Tom Rivolo as professional arts representatives from Chicago. We have Cynthia Weiss and Regina Gloria. And also Nicole Loinas from the library has been really helpful on this project, as has Stacy Williams from the library. So I'm really grateful to all of them for being here today. So I'm gonna share, if I'm able. Oh, Jesse, is it possible for me to have screen sharing? Okay. Okay. So I'm just going to share this PowerPoint and okay. So we already, talked a little bit about what this opportunity will be. Alderman Vasquez gave a really good summary, but we're talking about what you can see in this image. It's the east facade of the library that faces the reading garden. So to talk about the goals of this forum today, again, the Alderman summarized really well, announcing this project, getting you familiar with it as part of the community that's served by the library, familiarizing you with the city's process for commissioning public art, and also gathering input from all of you community members to help shape the mission statement or vision of this project. So our agenda, what we'll be covering today is, first I want to do like a quick little warm-up exercise, and then we'll move on to talk about the Chicago Public Art Program, which manages this type of project in partnership with Alderman. The Public Art Menu Program, this project is part of the Public Art Menu Program. The specific public art opportunity at the Budlong branch, and the artist selection process. We'll talk about the public art pre-qualified list, which factors into that process. We'll talk about examples of suitable art media for this particular site, and then we'll move on to some questions and answers to capture your input about what we should be keeping in mind as we form the vision for this project. So to start, I just wanted to take a few moments to think about public art and what is it, or what does it do? Maybe think about an experience that you've had with a public work of art and what you recall about that. Just take a moment just to think about what your experiences with public art have been. And now, if you have an idea in mind, maybe if you feel comfortable sharing, this would be a good opportunity to talk about like what our experiences are. Maybe you have the same experience as somebody else. Maybe somebody else has an experience that you've never had and would be interesting to know. So I would invite people to just unmute themselves and say a word or two. I can't see the chat, but feel free to pop it in the chat as well so other people can see. Jesse, maybe you can tell me if we get some messages in the chat. But I'll just give everybody a few minutes, or maybe a minute. Let's say a minute.
Thrilling and surprising.
Yep. Shannon, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thrilling and surprising.
Okay.
Cynthia here. I think both as a creator of public art and then someone who experiences it, when a place or a building is turned, or a space is turned into a place, when it becomes a meeting area, when something is transformed, is the public art that I love the most. And when community is invited to be part of that transformation.
Thank you.
Lynn threw in the chat, accessible on every level to everyone. Arma tells a story. Jennifer said connecting.
Very good. All really good observations. So I'll continue on with our presentation here, but if you want to pop something in the chat, please feel free. Jesse, I'm going to ask you if you don't mind to save the chat so I can review some of those contributions later.
Absolutely.
Now that we've kind of thought a little bit about what public art is, we'll move on to give some background on how the city of Chicago fosters public art across all of its neighborhoods. So to begin with, a brief background of the City of Chicago Public Art Program. Our City Council approved the Percent for Art Ordinance in 1978, and it specifies that 1 1/3% of municipal construction or renovation costs be allocated to commissioning or purchase of on-site artworks accessible to the public. You may have seen some of these artworks before, for example, at police stations and libraries around the city, and including the artwork in the Budlong Library's own main reading room. Through the Chicago Public Art Program, DCASE, Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, implements the Percent for Art Ordinance and also administers the acclaimed Chicago Public Art Collection and the city's mural registry. And so this is the history of how we have done public art in the city. But Percent for Art is not the only way public art can be funded in Chicago. The Chicago Public Art Program works collaboratively with aldermanic offices, like we're doing with this project, to administer neighborhood public art commissions via the Public Art Menu Program. And the Public Art Menu Program is a continuation of the partnership between the Public Art Program and aldermanic offices that began in 2017 with the 50 by 50 Neighborhood Arts Project. Through that program, the Public Art Program works collaboratively with the aldermanic office to administer neighborhood public art commissions across the city. And the Public Art Menu Program is the means by which we arrive at the present art opportunity for the Budlong Woods branch. DCASE and Alderman Vasquez and the library are working collaboratively to bring new public art to the east facade. For context, here you can see the library and that the east facade of the library building faces the intersection of Lincoln and Bryn Mawr. Directly in front of the east facade is the library's reading garden, and the surrounding buildings are mostly residential. You can see a lot of multi-unit right here in this picture. And there are businesses along Lincoln Avenue. And here's another view, zoomed out a little bit more, showing the residential area served by the library. You can also see quite a bit of green space, another, well-known feature of the Budlong Woods area. And if you're a regular visitor to the Budlong branch, you may have already noticed the existing public art installation in the reading room. This installation is by Andrew Young. It was commissioned through the Percent for Art Ordinance and completed in 2005. And I encourage you all to go to the library and read the description on the wall about this artwork. The inspiration came from two sources, conversations with lifelong residents of the Budlong Woods neighborhood and Henry David Thoreau's Walden. Now to the current public art opportunity. Artwork for the library will occupy the two wings of the east facade. So either side of this bank of windows that corresponds with the main reading room. It faces the reading garden, and it may take the form of a mural, a mosaic, or a low relief sculpture mounted to the wall. Library signage and electrical fixtures in this image are X'd out in red. They are to remain in place. Another stipulation for artwork is that it must be removable and therefore must attach only to the mortar and not the bricks. So murals or mosaics would need to be fabricated on panels and then mounted to the wall, and sculpture must have attachment points at the mortar lines, and any type of art needs to be removable so that building management can inspect the facade, make sure there are no problems, make repairs. And this opportunity at the Budlong branch will be open to all 50 members of the Chicago Public Art Prequalified list. Prequalified list is a juried pool of vetted professional artists, artist teams, and arts nonprofits based in Chicago. It is a mechanism for selecting candidates for public art opportunities managed by the Public Art Program. Public art or pre-qualified list members will be invited to submit a letter of interest indicating their interest in being considered for the project. Also, their unique qualifications and their approach to public art and community outreach. And then the project advisory panel, who I introduced earlier, will consider the letters of interest and the artist portfolios on file to arrive at a short list of finalists. Finalists will then be invited to respond for a request for proposals and to submit a design proposal for a fee. So from there, once we have the finalist design proposals, the community, community members here today, any other community members who want to attend, will have an opportunity to meet the finalists, learn about their work to date. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. During the design development phase, so while the finalists are developing their designs, community members will have an opportunity to meet the finalists, learn about their work to date, share input about the library and the community to help inform the finalists as they create their design proposals. The project advisory panel will review the design proposals and recommend a finalist to receive the commission for artwork. And from there, we will go into, a production phase. The artist will have time. Usually, these projects take, a year and a half to complete. So there will be fabrication. The artist will do research, finalize their design, and fabricate it, and then finally install it on site. Now, to give you some examples of facade installations that can be seen around the city. This just shows you there are several forms that wall-mounted art can take. The Little Village Branch Library it has a mural on their porch wall by Centrock in collaboration with the Yollocalli Arts Reach. And this was produced by the Chicago Public Art Group. You can see next to that, at the 23rd District Police Station, there is an installation, a metal installation of steel letter forms. They're based on quotes from a local poet and choreographer who attended nearby Lakeview High School, and and his protege, who is a dancer and choreographer and anthropologist, Catherine Dunham, a native Southsider. And the letter forms are overlaid, so you can't immediately discern them, but with time and looking, you can make out the different letters. And then finally, there is Chris Yoku's metal panel on the facade of the Fire Assessment and Training Center. It's also a metal fabrication, and from left to right, it traces the history of Chicago from the Great Fire of 1871 to the present. Many of us are familiar with murals. These are several examples of murals at Wynwood Walls, which is an open air museum in Miami. Just to show there are lots of different styles for murals for any medium. And some murals and mosaics are fabricated on removable panels that are attached to the mortar of the masonry wall. Like I mentioned before, that's what we would do in this instance. And it preserves the ability of the building owner to inspect and repair the wall. So this is an example that was commissioned through the 2017 50 by 50 initiative. And it was created in the artist studio on panel and then mounted to the wall. And this is at Merrimack Park. This is another example of an artwork, this time a mosaic, that's fabricated on panel and then installed on site. And this again was from the 2017 50 by 50 program. And it is located on the Metro Electric line at 938 East 87th Street. And here finally, you can see another mosaic, also an example of how a mosaic or mural may be superimposed over an existing wall. And last but not least, this is an example of a low relief sculpture that is installed on the CTA Brown Line Addison station by Greg Gomez. It's called The Encrypted Inning, and it's references nearby Wrigley Field and baseball scorecards. That is the iconography that you see is related to scorecard keeping. Now, just an overview of the commission. As the alderman mentioned, we have a $100,000 budget to cover any fees related to the project. Estimating that, you know, depending on the size of the short list of artists who are invited to submit design proposals, after paying them for their proposals, we might end up with about a $95,000 budget. Media, as mentioned before, mural or mosaic on panels or low relief sculpture, all of which would anchor into the mortar. The anticipated timeline is in June, we will issue the request for qualifications to the pre-qualified list. This will be an invitation to submit a letter of interest to be considered for a design proposal. July, initial review of those letters of interest, short list will be determined by the project advisory panel, and a request for proposals will be issued. In August or September, the panel will be reviewing design proposals and recommending one of the finalists to be awarded the commission. There will be an opportunity for community engagement in the artist selection and final design feedback. And then getting into the fall and into next summer, final design by the artist who is awarded the commission, fabrication, and installation. Fall of 2022, we anticipate the project to be completed and we will have a public dedication. So thank you all for sitting patiently and listening to my presentation. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Jessie, and she's going to guide us through a question and answer session to gather your input as community members on you know, what we should be keeping in mind in terms of what the vision should be for public art for this site, what an artist should or would need to know about the community, the library, that should be taken into consideration when they develop their proposals. And we will incorporate your feedback into the request for letters of interest. So the artist will be using that information to develop letters of interest and design proposals. So I'm going to unshare my screen and turn it over to you, Jessie.
Thanks for that. Okay, so I'm gonna do my least favorite thing in the world and share my screen with everybody. I admire people who can do this, but as I'm doing that, so this next part is a survey and it's in real time. So if folks can get out your phones, and if you don't have your phone, you can do this online. And if you don't have access to either one of those, then we can have you put it in chat, but by doing it on your phone or a computer, you will see the results populate for all 50 of us in real time once I share my screen. Okay. So this, okay. You all can see it, right? But can you see? Okay. Thumbs up if you can see my screen and like okay. So if folks can go either on your phone or on the computer to menti.com, menti.com. And then there's a number to type in. If somebody can type that number into chat, because I don't know how to do that when I'm sharing my screen, but it's 68470667. Is chat blowing up with a lot of people that don't know what? Andre, can you tell me what's going on in chat?
Yeah, we're good. People are putting the code up for everyone, so they all.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's just popping up as a bunch of messages, and I didn't know if it was a lot of people saying they couldn't do it.
I know exactly how that is when I'm on presenting, so no, we're good.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so our first thing to start thinking about, and there's going to be a screen that's going to pop up, but using kind of like we did for the first exercise, thinking about 1 to 2 words, right? When you think about the area around the library, the Budlong Woods, the Arcadia Terrace, right? This kind of West Ridge area, what words come to mind? So when you think about the Budlong Woods, Arcadia Terrace, kind of West Ridge neighborhood, what words come to mind? And if you're on your phone, you should be able to start typing in a few words, and then should start auto-populating. If not, then okay, there we go. I was like, then I'm gonna unshare my screen and change the presentation. Great. See, gotta love technology in these days. Right, so it looks like, right, we're kind of picking up on like the diverseness, like the tree line, kind of that, the nature part of it. Some other, like, you know, how it's quiet, we're still evolving and growing. I love the nature preserve. I live in this area, so I really, it warms my heart how much folks love nature over here. The inspiration, how dynamic it is, the multicultural, great. I am loving this. Folks still kind of thinking through some of the items. And we only have a few questions. So if anybody wants to, you know, take a few seconds to kind of unpack or talk about what you typed in there, this is a great time to give like our office and the committee just kind of, you know, context of what's important for this community for you. I'm seeing more responses, so that's great. Okay, if folks have other things that they want to share, feel free. But next, we are going to move on to think about, when we think about the Budlong Woods, how do I, okay, when we think about the library, right, as a whole, both the inside of it and the outside, what are words that come to mind? So when we're thinking about the library, what does that invoke, right? Both the garden space outside, the reading library, the art that they had talked about earlier that we already are able to showcase, checking out books. I know I love that. So when we think about the library, what does that mean to you? So community, books, voting is important. It is a, you know, was the polling location even when the pandemic was, you know, just ramping up and stuff like that. So it is a hub. Welcoming, you know, kind of sharing that accessibility, creativity, and ideas. I don't know what LR is an acronym for. Somebody put place for LR, or maybe it's IR. It's going to keep bouncing around, so good luck finding it. It's under knowledge right now. Oh,
I'm going to guess someone meant place for learning, but I could be wrong.
learning. Okay. There's a lot of acronyms that I'm not super familiar with. Right? Aw, third place beyond home. That's great. Right? Kind of that gathering, that community center, right? Piggybacking off of what folks had talked about in terms of, you know, what do the neighborhoods represent, right? That diversity, that kind of coming together. And it looks like, you know, from seeing this, a lot of the library is kind of bringing that for folks, right? Showcasing that. Now we're going to kind of switch gears on questions, and kind of think through in terms of, man, I need to remember how to advance. In terms of the art forms that were talked about, right? What is it that you would like to see, right? We're thinking about the wall of the library. We have a huge canvas that we could play with. What is it that you would most like to see there? A mosaic, a mural, or one of the 3D art installations that, you know, kind of up for interpretation? What is it? What really kind of piqued your interest?
Jesse, what would you consider the fire training thing? Was that a 3D installation?
I'm gonna default to somebody.
Yeah, I would,
our person to.
yeah, I think it would be a 3D installation. It's clearly not a mosaic and it's not just paint on a
I
surface.
figured. That's pretty
Correct.
cool.
Hi, this is Nathan with the Public Art Program. The Chris Yoku, the metal, it was water cut, laser cut, steel plate that's mounted. It's more like a screen, in a way, a flat screen that's hung on the wall.
Thanks for
Thank
that,
you,
Nathan.
Nathan.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for voting. It's, given just the size of our space and the size of our budget, we really wanted to, get the community input and kind of open it up to what the artist kind of see for this space. So we appreciate the feedback on what you'd like to see here. And then this next question. So, right, when we think about this project, what should be the ultimate goal of what this project represents? One caveat is there are 5 options here, and then on the next page, we'll have another word cloud exercise to where you can give your own feedback and have other answers outside of these 5. So when we think about when we think about the diversity, the nature part of the community, the community center of the library and stuff, what do we want this this piece to showcase, to be about? And this is a fun question. I've never used the bubbles part of this. So thanks for doing that, because this is a fun way to see the results. Thanks for that, everybody. Looks like we still have a few more votes coming in, so I'm going to leave some time up there. But in that, right, we have these 5 options on the screen. When we think about the sky being the limit for what we want this, this public art to be about, when we think about what we want it to represent, when you all think about the first exercise that you did of thinking about your interaction with the public art, like what are the types of things that that we want to make sure we incorporate going forward? And that's our last question. It'll be another word cloud. So when we think about this, we can public art at the library, we can express, what we're striving for, what we want to invoke in people by, or we want to achieve it by. So this is the place for if you wanted to write other in the last question, here's your spot. Man, crickets on this? Was I that concise in the other surveys? Thank you.
I'm not sure that I completely understand the question, to be honest.
Yes. DCase, do you all want to elaborate more? I use this as one of your prompts, so I'm happy to concede the floor.
Yeah, so I think based on what you responded to the last question, what the ultimate goal of the art at the Budlong branch should be, how would you envision that that the Public Art Commission for this branch could express that goal?
Yep. Yeah, so if somebody says they want it to be something that, draws somebody to the library, great. How could public art do that, right? So then be able to kind of write that out, because I think that helps for when we show that to artists and like when we think through the whole process.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for continuing to put in your thoughts and stuff. It is interesting, like as we've progressed through the survey, some of the words have gotten smaller, right? For this last one, it is clear that we have a lot of people giving us kind of ideas, and that's what we are hoping for with this, is kind of, our catch-all to have this, because we can't gather all together to kind of talk and really unpack a bunch of the questions and stuff like that. So thank you for this. And thanks for, I'm going to stop sharing now, but thank you everybody for doing the survey with us and kind of walking through that. I should have the agenda, but I just closed the internet. But I think that our next part is questions and stuff like that folks have kind of about the project, or comments and things like that, feedback. Again, thanks for taking the survey.
Yep. So we've got right now, Alex, quick draw on the questions. Alex from Block Club, you can see here. One quick question: how best can neighbors share their thoughts ahead of the next meeting? So I know they can reach out to our office, but Jesse, is there other formats?
Yeah, so our next big community meeting is going to be after we have sent out and kind of narrowed it down to a few different artists, and like they have their proposal. And so it'll be a little bit further in the process, but for right now, like if folks have, comments, or they weren't able to attend and they want to, like offer feedback for any of the survey questions and stuff, they can definitely reach out to the office. Preferably info@40th Ward, and I'll put that in the chat. It'll eventually come to me, but I'm getting ready to take some time off, and so I don't want folks to email me and then it sits there for a while. So, but I'll put that in the chat.
Yeah, plus info makes perfect sense, right? So like if Black Club's going to put it out and tell people where to send it out, send it to info. That way we get a chance to like hear from everybody. So. Any other questions, folks? Feel free to either type in the chat, you can raise hand, or you can unmute and ask whatever you feel comfortable with. If you have any questions or ideas or just comments you want to make as far as today.
I'll also, I'm sorry, Lydia, go ahead.
Thanks, Joanna. Thank you, Alderman Vasquez, and thanks so much, Jesse. I see a lot of our pre-qualified artists in the room, and it's wonderful to see all of you. I hope that you will be excited to submit your letters of interest. I just wanted to make a tiny point of clarification, because I know we'd maybe been a little confusing about this before, but the next community forum, we will have a short list of artists who are going to be developing proposals, but we will encounter each other before they've designed anything. So it's another opportunity with all of you again. And of course, as robust as this turnout is, it's not everyone. So an opportunity to really have a creative exchange, to share stories that will really help more specifically inform the designs and give community members a chance to meet these artists. Also realize I didn't introduce myself. I'm Lydia Ross. I'm the Director of Public Art at DCASE. And I would just put out there, either in the chat or with the time remaining, just looking around the screen, it's such an amazing assortment of artists and community members, some of whom I imagine have been in the neighborhood for a long time. So, this is not the only opportunity. It would be great for you to send information to that email, but maybe a little open forum time to just share important stories, people, places that we should know as we're thinking about the mission statement. I think the survey was awesome for capturing kind of group ideas, but I'd love to hear some stories in the time we have remaining.
Sure. Thank you for that, Lydia. If folks have anything they want to contribute as far as that, raise their hand as well. I think right now I see Patrick has his hand up, and then there's a question on the chat as well. So Patrick, if you'd like to go next, please.
Yeah, hey everybody. My name's Patrick Henderson. I'm on the board of a building on Catalpa. And my question is related to this project is this going to be a bookend to, like, for instance, the arts block on the far south side? Is if this, like, let's being a specific example, if this is piece of artwork is supposed to draw people to the front of the actual building to congregate, could you view this as a bookend, or is this completely separate from the $15 million TIF money?
Yeah, like I would say a couple of things, right? So it is separate when you think about the funding source, right? The 15 million that we're talking about ends at Catalpa. But the way things develop, right? If something starts getting a lot of attention, it continues to spread on beyond. And I think the library in and of itself, we should be making that more of an attraction. And I think so that's absolutely part of it. And I think what you'll see over time is, as it all develops on Lincoln, you start seeing more like street art and these other things that we want to put there. It'll continue to expand, right? So I could see it going up to Peterson, right? Depending on what else gets activated, right? So I think thinking about it as a bookend makes sense in like trying to be finite and let's see what we can get done. But I typically think of it as like almost like a momentary landmark because it'll continue growing, right? Ultimately, we want to support all the businesses we can there. So I hope that helps kind of frame it. Not to sound like I'm saying, talking out both sides of my mouth.
Yeah, I mean, all these things, to your point, they affect each other, right? And so if you're looking for foot traffic, I mean, for instance, the foot traffic you get in Lincoln Square in that, the main square area with the fountain and people congregate, that's kind of what I'm, envisioning. But, I'm curious to hear kind of what you're envisioning as far as that.
And we've had conversations about some of that, right? So then I'll say this, like north of it, like that US Bank, right? Somebody proposed making that an Andy's Custard and like doing that and putting art and like, right? So there's a lot of other things that I think will continue. And actually, it's a good chance for Tom to introduce himself from the library, but we've had conversations about like what could happen with the outside of that space as far as like potentially doing stuff where you can have stuff for children outdoors, right? So Tom, if you want to introduce and kind of share some of that vision.
Yeah, how do you do? I want to thank Alderman Vasquez and DCase and the residents of the 40th Ward for giving this project the seal of approval. We've been looking at that garden for a number of years now, and all of the wonderful potential it has. It's really unusual in the Chicago Public Library system in that there's all this land around the library, which kind of fits the parky atmosphere of the area and its history as truck farm capital of the world with Lyman Budlong and all those folks, and its current kind of resident status in the middle of the ward. So I like the idea that the alderman has of a bookend, because of course the word book ties in with the library, and we kind of see it as an anchor to an activation of the space. And my first assistant children's librarian and I were talking about this beforehand. We kind of see it as being a beautified space that affects the neighborhood and the ward, is a focal point, where Lincoln and Bryn Mawr come together so nicely. But we also see it as an opportunity to build on the community that the library represents. Public libraries are really more about community than anything else. And that kind of ties into the whole 40 Lincoln Avenue arts corridor and those themes. So, it could be kids making stepping stones or rock painting, sidewalk art, concerts in that area, little music concerts. Not necessarily quiet activities, but more of STEAM type activities, as we call it in the library now. Science, technology, engineering, art, gardening. You know, eventually we see garden boxes being in there for kids to have a kind of sensory garden, maybe practicing gardening. There's a lot of potential for that space. And we've used it in the past, kind of on an ad hoc basis for crafts and maybe showing a movie, National Day of Puppetry. But we see the art as an anchor for kind of fulfilling more of a vision. It's and the space is almost 20 years old now. So as the alderman and his staff know, you know, spaces just don't naturally maintain themselves. They can get a little tired. And the space is really crying out for some public art. It's a blank canvas, and it's just a really excellent opportunity to put something in that thousands of people will notice, if not every day, every week, as they're driving by, walking by, visiting the library. I don't know if I answered your question there, but
No, yeah.
anyway, thank you all.
No, yeah, you did more. And I appreciate Patrick for asking the question, because I think it adds even more context to what the public art could represent there, especially when we got artists on here. So thank you very much for that. I will get to the chat. I see Aram, you have your hand up.
Hi, I'm a resident. I live not even a block away from the library, and I'm also an artist on the pre-qualified list, so it's pretty exciting to be here. Yeah, so I have about 15 to 20 children that live on my block that just come over to my house on the weekends and make art in my backyard with me, right? So I was thinking about them really when I'm thinking about this potential to create art at the library. And so that was sort of leading into my question. And, you know, even if it's not me, also sort of expressing a desire, right, for what I would like to see at my library, right, is that, you know, even on that street, there's like so many schools just on that street, right? Like my child goes to St. Hilary, which is like also 1 block away, right? And the kids on my block, they all go to different schools like Budlong and Chappelle and yeah, and so like really thinking about how it would be so exciting to be able to, you know, involve collaboration with, I mean, Tom, you talked about it as well before I raised my hand, but like really involving these youth that live here, right? Like predominantly a lot of families live here, and so it would be so exciting to be able to collaborate with these schools and these student groups and really make art with them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I just want to add to that. So it's definitely a great idea to get input from kids in the community. Just so that the artists on this call know the type of funding that we're using for this project. It has to be spent on the art commission. It can't fund like any kind of programming, like to get community members or get kids involved in the design development. The artist can interview students, community members on their own. That is fine, that's welcome. But as far as the budget for the project, like the type of funding that we're using, it can only be paid to a professional artist. So just to keep that in mind.
Kind of on that, Joanna, I'm curious because I know like when we did like the mural at A&Z Art Plaza, and that's different because it was Make Way for People, right? There was originally the idea from the artists of like kind of almost doing it like the paint by number, right? Knowing and having the vision, laying it all out, and then incorporating a way to get kids, but that was more like the asphalt paint. So that has its own challenges, but I just was wondering in that regard, is that a possibility if it's like, hey, this is how it's going to be developed, but it's bringing in potentially other folks to help paint and put that together and do the mosaic?
I would
Right, go ahead, Lydia.
I would jump in. I would say that the loose answer is yes. I think for the purposes of this conversation and for artists kind of dreaming big at this point, I think there are ways for us to think about involving community members and youth, and then kind of getting into the nitty gritty of what the budget can and can't be used for. But I think, Aram, that's really helpful feedback, and there are definitely ways to make it work.
Okay, yeah, awesome. Thank you for that. The other question I see here is from Sarah Connor, and it's, I think I know the answer, and I'm appreciative that it's being asked because I think it'll provide some clarification. So the question is, what kind of support is available for inexperienced artists with regards to fabrication methods and research? I think if in the beginning, what was mentioned was that the artists are pre-qualified with the city. So I think that kind of, I guess if the answer is, can an inexperienced artist be one that does this? They most likely wouldn't be, because they wouldn't then be one of the qualified artists that DCASE would allow to kind of move forward with. But I'll let DCASE answer.
Yeah, that's correct. We will be opening this opportunity to all 50 members of the Chicago Public Art Pre-Qualified list. That is a list of pre-vetted artists who have demonstrated that they've done professional level public art in the past, and they've demonstrated their ability to develop and lead this kind of project. So they will be equipped to propose to us how they will approach making art for the site and installing it, and the selection panel or the advisory panel will be responding to those proposals on a case-by-case basis and really taking into consideration what the artists are proposing, not the other way around.
Yeah, and I would add, I would imagine most of the neighbors and taxpayers here, knowing that there's $100,000 kind of appropriated to do this, would want somebody who professionally knows how to get that going, right? Because you don't want to have potentially something that someone might be overwhelmed by, right? You want to have something that people can handle responsibly. So that's part of it too.
I would just jump in. Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman.
Oh, no, after you, Lydia.
I would just jump into, Joanna gave a really great overview, or the tip of the iceberg of the public art program at DCASE, but just to say that this is one amongst many public art projects that we do, and one of the many ways that DCASE offers support and professional development for artists. So anyone who is not currently on the pre-qualified list, we update it every 2 years, so there's always a chance to get on it, but also encourage you to reach out to us. If you're not already on the DCASE mailing list, you can just email publicart@cityofchicago.org. For folks who might be really interested in public art and would just be getting started, to be informed about opportunities for workshops or smaller scale projects to kind of get your feet wet in this process.
Yeah, thank you. And also I'd add to that, any artist who may not be qualified and similarly want to get involved in things, feel free to reach out to our office. Like, I work with our team to kind of have a nice little repository of artists. So whenever we get opportunities, whether it's like a private owner wants to do something on their wall or whatnot, like, we try to get that out to as many people as possible so that we can work through that. So yeah, absolutely reach out. We're happy to help in that regard. I think we're at 7:01, so we're kind of wrapped up, and I think we've got all the questions that we had answered. So I wanted to really thank y'all and just tell you how awesome it is to see the turnouts. And really, as was pointed out earlier, seeing all of y'all, and some of y'all who I haven't seen since I knocked on your doors. It's just really great to have you all here, and I look forward to what the Budlong Woods Bookend ends up looking like. I think it'll be really great piece and jewel for the ward. So thank you all so much. Enjoy your evening. Get some dinner if you can. Stay away from each other unless you're vaxxed up. Keep your masks on. All the other good things. Stay safe, and see you all soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.